Hello, everyone, and welcome to Decoding the WSL, the podcast dedicated to the stats and facts in the WSL. I'm your host today, Jacob Bernstein, and today we are joined by three guests. Firstly, we have a podcast regular and someone whose Know Your Stat form is similar to Everton's WSL form. Didn't start too well, won a few games in a row, but lost their last game. It's Izzy Duddy. Izzy, how are you doing?
That was brutal but fair. I wouldn't have mind being compared to Everton a few seasons ago, but yeah, that one feels. Do you know what? I'll take it though. It could be a lot worse. You could have been comparing me to like Leicester. So, yeah, I'm good. Thank you, Jacob. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Secondly, we have someone who I saw was busy on the weekend selling the Guna fanzine outside of the Emirates on Saturday. It's Freddie Cardy. Freddie, how are you doing?
Yeah, very well, and thanks for the plug. We've got a new issue out. A lot of excitement for that. Not helped by the 12 o'clock kickoff in terms of sales, but we've got a big week at the Emirates. We've got the Chelsea game tomorrow. Then I think around 50,000 people are coming to the Spurs game, which is a beautiful 5:30 kickoff in the evening, which is going to make such a difference. So yeah, big busy week. A bit of a mix in terms of following Arsenal men and women this weekend, but hoping to put yesterday behind me, as I'm sure you are too, Jacob.
Yeah, exactly. But I am looking forward to the North London derby on the weekend. I will be at the Emirates in the away end. So yeah, looking forward to that one. And yeah, stay tuned for our game week 19 preview coming out soon. And thirdly, we have someone whose Know Your Stat form is similar to Tottenham's WSL form. Started really well, but has now lost a few games in a row. It's Laura Howard. Laura, how are you doing?
All the worst for that comparison, but I think my internet's holding up about as well as Leicester. So yeah, we hope that we'll have like the first half against Villa.
Exactly. As a quick roundup of, well, before we get into the weekend's action, there were two midweek games which we didn't discuss on last week's pod because we recorded beforehand. As some magic from Potter gave Chelsea a 2-1 win over Brighton last Wednesday, whilst two teams were united in a stalemate as West Ham and Man United played out a 0-0 draw. On to the weekend's action, and to round it up, surely she can't do it again. She can, as Bunny Shaw scores another hat-trick against Spurs in a 5-2 win. A 5-star win and a hat-trick was so nice it had to be done twice this weekend, as Chloe Kelly's hat-trick sealed a 5-0 win for Arsenal. It was an Izzy good draw for LCL as they came from behind to get a point off Chelsea. Everton were feeling quite mal as Melvin's last minute goal sealed a win for United. Birds were sleeping on Sunday as Brighton and Liverpool played out a 0-0 draw. Although the Birds were sleeping in that game, the Fish were alive in the next as Salmon provided a lovely assist for Hansen as Villa came from behind to beat Leicester. But let's start at one of the midday kickoffs on Saturday. It was Man City 5, Spurs 2. Bunny Shaw took all the plaudits on this one. She scored a 20-minute first half hat-trick. Carolyn and Amanda Nilden own goal gave City a 5-1 lead before the halftime break. The second half was a bit of a non-event, although Spurs did come back. They got one late on through Beth England, and the game ended 5-2. There are many stats that I can kind of wax lyrical about Bunny Shaw. Sam Piccarino told me to include one that Bunny Shaw has now scored hat-tricks in her last 4 home games that City have had against Spurs in the WSL. That's going back to the 22-23 season. And she's also scored 15 league goals against Spurs, which is the most anyone has had against any opponent in WSL history. And 2 more for you. Bunny Shaw's hat-trick was the earliest hat-trick scored in WSL history in 21 minutes. And it was also the quickest hat-trick in WSL history in 12 minutes and 37 seconds. Freddie, I'll come to you first. Quite simply, how good is Bunny Shaw?
She is one of the best in the world. She really is. That is an insane stat. You know, the hat tricks against Tottenham. There must be some Arsenal connections there somewhere to be putting up those numbers. And she's just unplayable on her day, and that was her day. And I just don't think there's a striker in the WSL or perhaps around the world who can do what she does, and she can just be impossible to defend against sometimes. And you know, it's tough for Spurs because their season obviously starts by conceding 5 to Manchester City, and it feels like a little bit of a reality check as they've come quite a long way from that time. But for a team trying to push on to get higher up the table, it was just a little bit of putting them back down to earth. But a 12-minute first half hat trick, it's remarkable, and she's just got the strength, she's got the physicality. I think that the first goal is a lot tougher than it looks. How she manages to pull that finish off, and then we know her aerial threats. If you're City's wingers, you're going to get so many assists because you just have to put it on a plate for her sometimes. And yeah, she was unplayable. She probably could have had more. And you just know it's not your day when she's in that form. There's not a lot you can do if you're on the opposition.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, all three of Bonnie Shaw's goals came from crosses, and when you have players like Alex Greenwood and Lauren Hemp providing those assists, I mean, Bonnie Shaw's gonna get goals. Laura, I'll come to you next on Spurs. Obviously, damaging loss for them. They were missing their two starting centre backs this season, Toka Koga, Claire Hunt, who have been off at the Asia Cup, and it's now also been confirmed that Claire Hunt is going to have surgery, so she'll I don't know how long she'll be out for, but she will miss potentially the end of the season. Is there any cause for concern for Spurs, especially considering they've got Arsenal and then United in their next two in the WSL?
I think concern is relative in this case. I think they're in a fairly comfortable position. That they've done very well in the first half of the season to put themselves there. So I think you're looking at two really tough games against Arsenal and United where you're expecting potentially, there's a possibility they don't pick up any points from both those matches, with Arsenal and United firmly within that Champions League spot race, whereas Tottenham are now kind of off that. So I think if you're looking at it, I kind of speaking on your behalf here, Jacob, but if you're looking at it as a Spurs fan, kind of wanting to push for the Champions League spots, I think, there is concern there. But I think if you're just looking at it as kind of like our season as a whole, and you can take the kind of context of missing those two key players, and the fact of two very tough fixtures coming up, I don't think it's like there's no threat of relegation here. I still think they'll contest those matches fairly well. I don't think, kind of from an Arsenal perspective, they're going to be expecting an easy match on Saturday, and I'm sure United will also be run close. I think the United games particularly kind of maybe attractive for Tottenham in terms of getting a bit of a scalp, and I don't think that's changed necessarily. I still think that they've been a strong outfit all season. I don't think a minor blip kind of affects that, especially as you mentioned with the absences. But I guess it's that thing of you see the squad depth that some of the teams at the top of the table have, and suddenly they've lost kind of two starting centre backs, and this is how they're performing. So I think it's maybe a kind of reality check of where we're at in a squad building process, but I don't think there's real concern necessarily.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think Spurs are. There was a time a few games ago, a few match weeks ago, where it looked like Spurs would potentially go and challenge for those Champions League spots. I think that's faded now, and I'd be surprised if we didn't finish fifth this season. We're 9 points clear of, I think it's now Everton, London City Lionesses, and Aston Villa all on 20 points. The Spurs on 29. But let's move on to the next game, which was also Saturday midday kickoff, and that's Arsenal 5, West Ham 0. It was another five-star display in the WSL. Chloe Kelly got a hat trick for Arsenal, and Russo and Blackstenius added goals to make it 5-0 for Arsenal. The stat that I liked out of this one is Renee Slegers became the first manager in WSL history to stay unbeaten in their first 16 home matches. Which just shows that that's going back to last season as well when she came in. And it was a dominant display from Arsenal, 2.7 XG to 0.03, 23 shots for Arsenal to West Ham's 1, and 11 shots on target to West Ham's 1. Izzy, I'll come to you first. With United dropping points in midweek against West Ham, and then Chelsea dropping points this weekend against London City Lionesses, Arsenal are now 2 points behind Chelsea and 3 points behind United, but they do have 2 games in hand. How are you feeling about Arsenal's chances of securing Champions League football after the performance on the weekend?
Yeah, I'm feeling a lot more confident, to be honest. Obviously, scheduling, I think, is going to be the key issue here, especially if we beat Chelsea on Tuesday and then in the return leg next week. But I think Arsenal are sort of learning a bit more to kind of play well with different formations. And I think that's something I personally was a bit worried about earlier in the season. You know, they were playing the same sort of starting 11, but I think they've sort of found form kind of with a different team. Obviously, we didn't have any of the Australians, and that was a concern for me going into it, because I think Steph Catley particularly has been brilliant for us this season. But yeah, everyone was like firing, and obviously Chloe Kelly is kind of back doing Chloe Kelly things and really putting herself on the sheet to be in the starting 11. So yeah, it's really, really positive. And you know, West Ham didn't play well, but they also just didn't have a look in. And I think I felt really bad for Olivia Smith for not getting a goal, because, I mean, she had an absolute banger of a shot that hit the bar, and it was like, how did that not go in? But she played brilliantly as well. So it felt a bit of a shame that she didn't get on the score sheet. But yeah, I think when you have a team like that clearly can play and play, you know, different players as well, and still keep that dominance, it makes me a lot more comforted about, you know, potential scheduling and overload issues with the team. So yeah, fingers crossed good form continues.
Yeah, I think the thing you mentioned about kind of having a couple of players unavailable because of the Asia Cup, obviously Caitlin Ford also unavailable, and that is potentially a reason why Chloe Kelly started. I was surprised to see when I was looking, it was only Chloe Kelly's third WSL start of the season. But Laura, I'll come to you next. How impressive was her performance, and do you see her getting some more minutes as we kind of get into the latter stage of the season, especially with those kind of build up of WSL catch-up games and Champions League? Do you think Chloe Kelly will feature more?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of playing out in a similar trajectory to last season almost for her, in the sense that first half of the season she was obviously at City last season but out with injury this year, and even when she wasn't out with injury she was clearly carrying a knock and not at her best, whereas this season she's been able to come back into the setup at Arsenal post like dealing with that injury, and really have the kind of a similar impact it feels at this point of the season, to inject that that spark off the wing, and shown just like exactly what she's capable against West Ham. I've just kind of been looking on SofaScore, and you rarely see a full 10 out of 10 performance on their ratings, and I know that it's all very arbitrary of how they do it, but she's got a 10 out of 10 for that game, and I think that speaks volumes in terms of just how perfect a performance it was. And I don't think there was ever really a moment where Arsenal were really challenged. I don't think West Ham were necessarily the best of opponents. And you look at that first goal and you're not expecting that to go in most games, especially direct from her, but she's putting the balls into those dangerous positions and she looked really direct. And certainly kind of I think there's been moments this season where Arsenal's wingers, particularly in the first half of the season, you're waiting for something to click a little bit, and it feels like for Chloe Kelly that's really clicked. And yeah, I mean, not to repeat the point, but it does very much feel similar to the way she was able to have that impact last season, and hopefully, you know, from an Arsenal perspective, that's what she continues to have, and I'm sure she'll play a really key role in upcoming matches with the kind of form she's in. And I think she's one of those players that can be relied upon to deliver performances against the likes of West Ham, but also in the bigger moments too. So yeah, definitely expecting to see more of her, and hopefully to see the form continuing.
Yeah, and Freddie, quick word on West Ham. They're now 3 without a win. When Leicester were ahead at Villa, against Villa on Sunday, West Ham did actually slip into the bottom 3, only momentarily. What are your thoughts on West Ham at the moment, and should they be worried going into the final few games of the season?
I think West Ham were really good against Manchester United the Wednesday before. Defensively they were really well organised, and I think just, you know, Rita Guarino referred to it after those 2 games in a few days maybe just took it out of them a little bit. I think missing Vivasei, considering they were already missing the likes of Katrina Gorry and Rico Ueki at the Asia Cup, really big blow, to be honest. So then have Asei missing that as well, because for me, Martinez, Asei, Ueki, it is a really good front three, and one for, that really doesn't deserve to be second from bottom in the WSL. They didn't have that attacking threat. Without Gorry, they've really lacked any semblance of control in midfield. They really should have been more than 1-0 down at half-time. Kinga Shamik makes some good saves. And they just never really got a foothold in the game. Arsenal really dominated the possession. You go 1-0 down away to Arsenal after 4 minutes, it's going to be a long game. And I just think it would have taken quite the effort, to draw with Manchester United, get anything there away to the Emirates, where Renee Slager still hasn't lost in the WSL. So there's a long way to go, but I think once you get those players back from the Asian Cup, I think they're good enough to stay up now. I'm interested to see sort of long term where they go under Rita Guarino, but I just think they were missing, too many players. Whereas Arsenal have the depth to lose that Aussie trio but move players in, it's just not quite the same for a club like West Ham.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think looking at West Ham's fixtures, their next three are London City Lionesses, Liverpool and Villa. So they're facing teams that are 10th, 8th and 7th. So almost kind of floating around them. So you'd hope that they were kind of might be able to pick up some points there. But moving on to the next game, also midday on Saturday, is London City Lionesses 1, Chelsea 1. Chelsea took a first half lead through Yana Ritten-Canarid. There was a lovely flicked header from Aggie Beaver-Jones, and Ritten-Canarid slotted home. And then Izzy Goodwin made it 1-1 in the second half. When I was looking at the stats for this one, it really was a game of two halves. In the first half, London City Lionesses had 0.616 xG to Chelsea's 1.24. London City Lionesses had one shot to Chelsea's 10, and London City had one shot on target to Chelsea's 3. But then that was completely flipped in the second half. London City had 1.09 xG to Chelsea's 0.55. They had 14 shots to Chelsea's 3, and they had 6 shots on target to Chelsea's 2. So I think London City were definitely kind of deserved for their draw. Izzy, I'll come to you first. What happened in that second half for Chelsea?
I do worry about Chelsea at the moment in terms of they seem slightly more lethargic in games, and I don't know if that was sort of the case in the second half of this game. I didn't actually see it, but obviously ahead of the Champions League game tomorrow, Sonia Bompastor has kind of joked about the 8 players that are available for Chelsea. And, I think they don't have the squad depth that they once relied on. And also they don't have, their players who went off to the Australia Cup as well. And I think that combined with sort of the noise and rumourings about comings and goings and everything that's happened sort of with management there over the last few weeks, I do think it might be starting to show that kind of ruthless Chelsea mentality that we've come to kind of know, and just like get the job done is not necessarily as potent as it once was. But having said that, we know what Izzy Goodwin can do. So to be honest, well, obviously as an Arsenal fan, I'm happy for the draw, but I'm also happy for Izzy Goodwin because she's obviously struggled to kind of score in front of goal. And yeah, I'm glad she's finally got her name on the score sheet after a sort of dry spell.
Yeah, I saw the sort of day where Chelsea apparently only had 8 first team players in training, and she joked that they were like training for the World Sevens tournament that's coming up. Laura, I'll come to you next. Quick question on London City Lionesses. They're now winless in 4, which is potentially concerning. They did obviously make that managerial change over the winter break. It's not the best run under Eda Maestra at the moment. What's going on? Although it is a good draw to get this point against Chelsea.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one to judge. Like, you kind of hit the reset button when you bring in a new manager, and I don't think they were doing particularly badly under Jocelyn pressure. So it was almost like it was always going to be hard to kind of improve upon that, and therefore the pressure's automatically already on Maestra. And I think that was a strange decision, however you look at it. And obviously it kind of set the tone for, okay, we want immediate success, and clearly that hasn't been delivered. So it feels like whatever they're doing is kind of falling flat. But I think when you look at their performance as a newly promoted side in the WSL kind of as a whole this season, it should be it's fine. It's pretty good. When you compare it to previous teams, previous newly promoted teams, and the recent kind of history of that has just been going straight back down. And I think it's very clear that they won't do that, and particularly kind of showing that with results like Chelsea. And I think because of the investment, because of the whole narrative around Michelle Kang, people wanted and expected these results immediately from the off. And I think the fact that they are coming now is a positive sign. I think we have seen plenty of positive signs from London City Lionesses, both under pressure and Maestra, throughout the season. But yeah, it's not quite kind of fully clicked, and they've struggled to get those big results that maybe everyone was expecting of them. But I think the case with London City Lionesses this season is a little bit expectation versus reality. And when you kind of contextualize what the reality is for them, it's not too bad, and it's not anything to kind of be like, oh, this is disastrous. But at the same time, you think maybe from Michelle Kang's perspective, it would want to be a little bit better. Obviously, they justified it on kind of playing style switch, which seems bizarre, but what isn't bizarre about elements of that club?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's really hard to benchmark London City Lionesses because, as you said, they're doing well in relation to promoted teams like Bristol City and Crystal Palace in the last couple of years. But obviously, there's been significant investment. They were kind of between 5th and 6th at that winter break and have dropped off since then. Going on to the 4th and final game that was on Saturday, it was Man United 2, Everton 1. United took the lead 1-0. Elizabeth Turland scored from a Jess Pot cross. Everton scored in the 90th minute to equalise. Melissa Lawley crossed to Gabaro, who scored. But then the game was not over as United had a corner on the 94th minute and Melvie Mallard won the game. Mallard's goal was United's latest ever winning goal in the WSL. And looking at the stats, United were probably deserved for their win. 1.8 XG to 0.89, 16 shots to 7 and 9 shots on target to 3. However, I'm sure Everton will be very disappointed to have got that 90th minute equaliser and then go on to lose. Freddie, I'll come to you first. How key will that winning goal be for United in their push for Champions League football?
Massive for Manchester United. A couple of us were looking the Emirates press box after that Chelsea draw. The fact that they play each other on the last day, I think that might well be where the drama is. There's a good possibility that turns into a straight shootout. And after that, draw against West Ham, which would have been really frustrating for them. They have to win every game, I think, for it to stay in their own hands and to make sure they finish in the top 3. And they've just got to find ways of winning. It might be a case of winning ugly at times. And when you concede in the 90th minute, an equaliser and go on and win the game, Mark Skinner said that was a sign of his side's character, and you have to agree. It was whether it's Courtney Brosnan's mistake, I'm not sure, but the delivery in is really good. And you've got forward options now at Manchester United, even if the style doesn't always seem to suit them. You've got Turland, you've got Mallard, you've got, Park and Rolfo a little bit deeper. You've got the option of Schuller, who you can bring on as well. So they have got these goal-scoring threats. And Mallard's been really good this season for them as well. I think that's a really key result with what's still to come this season.
Yeah, agreed. And Izzy, quick word on Everton. It was Everton's first loss in 5 after winning 4 in a row. I think 3 of those were after the managerial change. Were they unlucky not to get a point in this one? And how much positivity will Everton take from their recent run of 4 wins in a row and then being able to compete and almost get that point against United?
Yeah, I think if I was Everton after that game, I'd be frustrated not to kind of hold on to that draw. But I think when you do look at it sort of a bit more zoomed out, clearly that managerial shift has sort of had a bounce for them. They've been playing a lot better, and, with players like Gabaro as well, obviously coming back, that's been really key for them. So yeah, it's kind of a weird one because obviously looking at the stats, United dominated that game, but actually they were sort of 1-1 for quite a lot of the game, and it was literally just a last minute winner from a corner. So you can kind of see it from both sides, but I think if anything, it will kind of spur them on for the next games to kind of get back on that run of form, because I do think coming that close to a side like United, given how Everton started this season, is quite a positive thing. And I do think that it will be an upward trajectory for them. So hopefully they're not too disheartened by the result.
Yeah, and I mean Everton's next fixture is the Merseyside derby against Liverpool on the weekend, so that's some way to bounce back, and we'll go into it in more depth in the preview. But I'm looking forward to that one because we've got two kind of form sides facing off in that one. But that rounds off Saturday's action. On Saturday, we saw the top 7 play, interestingly, which meant there was probably a quieter Sunday. We had 2 games, the first of which was Brighton 0, Liverpool 0. Mia Enderby and Beata Olsen had key chances for Liverpool in the first half. Venegas hit the bar for Brighton in the second half, and Liverpool had a chance in the dying seconds to win the game from a corner late on, but Mpome cleared the ball off the line. Laura, question on Brighton. Brighton haven't won in their last 4 games, and they now sit 9th in the WSL table when kind of maybe halfway through the season, kind of mid-table was looking more promising for them. What's happened with them recently?
Yeah, it feels like a real slide at Brighton this season, and I think having looked so exciting over the past, last season, it really felt that they were on an upwards trajectory, and to kind of have had the second half of the season that they've had, it feels like a kind of stop to that momentum that we've seen them kind of gather, of kind of hoping that they'll be challenging, top 6, top 5, that sort of range. And certainly they've had kind of impacts on, even title races or top 4 races in the past because of how strong they've been, and we haven't really seen that in the second half of the season. I have to admit, with the scheduling and everything, I haven't been able to watch an awful lot of them in the second half of the season. So to kind of, I feel like I'm probably misplaced to diagnose exactly what's gone on or what's changed there, but it does feel a bit puzzling, and I think maybe elements of it is that they came in as this new exciting setup with Vidosic. They're playing more attacking football and had done that, and then I think you see them in some games really capitalise and benefit from that, and in other games they've been torn apart in the past and conceded quite a lot. And maybe results like a 0-0 is that kind of reactionary thing of like a manager realising to make sure and improve, you've kind of got to shore up that defence, and that's part of the long-term kind of plan within the WSL. But within that, you then have to compromise some of that former attacking input. And I think as well, like, personnel changes have been quite key for Brighton this season. They lost some of that real attacking potency that they had last season with kind of Nikita Paris, and obviously losing Michelle Adjaman at the start of this season to the ACL injury. So I think there have been like factors against them, and obviously how much of an impact, like obviously the really sad stuff off the pitch with Vidosic has had, you can never kind of judge on that, how that impacts the squad. But I do think maybe there is some I think elements of losing personnel and not properly replacing them in terms of that attacking sense, and then also maybe just that reactionary element of we need to shore up a bit here. We were a really exciting team, which was great, but how can we address that defensively? And with that comes compromises going forward.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's also an important point for Liverpool. I mean, Liverpool now on 14 points, sitting in 10th. They're starting to break away in terms of from the bottom. I mean, they did sit bottom of the table at the Christmas break and have gone and picked up some really important points. But I don't think this 0-0 draw will go down in the history books as a classic. Going on to the last game of the weekend, which was Leicester 1, Aston Villa 2. Leicester took a 1-0 lead. Alicia Lehmann scored against her former club. Villa equalised just after half-time. Lynn Films' corner was flicked in by Anna Patton, and then Villa completed their comeback and made it 2-1. Great ball from Ebony Salmon finding Kirsty Hansen, and Kirsty Hansen slotted home for her 10th WSL goal of the season. You maybe would have thought that Janina Leipzig would have done better, because the shot was, I wouldn't say straight at her, but it was at her, and she kind of spilled it into the net. So I think she'll probably be disappointed with that. But 0.85 xG for Leicester to Villa's 1.05, 6 Leicester shots to 12 Villa shots, and 2 Leicester shots on target to Villa's 3. Freddie, I'll come to you on Villa. It's Villa's first win in 5, which now puts them level on points with Everton and London City Lionesses in that kind of fight for 6th, you'd probably say. How good is Kirsty Hanson? I mean, as I said before, 10th WSL goal of the season, second top scorer in the WSL behind Bunny Shaw.
Yeah, probably flown under the radar a bit for me this season. I don't think she's been talked about as much as she probably deserves to. She just epitomises Villa's style of play. I think a lot of what they do is built around her. You know, on their day, they're a really, really good counter-attacking transitional side. And Hanson, she can sort of drift wide. She can pick up those pockets, and she hits the ball hard. You know, she's a very good finisher, and it wasn't her best effort to get past Leipzig on Sunday, but I just think it's a sort of style that's built around her, and I think Villa are in a decent position, you know, to go and really challenge for 6th. I think they probably have underperformed at times this season. They threatened to do that at half time. It was a great finish by Patton. You know, I thought for a centre back, it was a really well taken goal. Frustration for Leicester, you know, to be 1-0 up, quite a well worked goal, and not hold on to that to at least get a draw. I think they are in real trouble, but I think there's more to come from Villa this season.
Yeah, and Izzy, word on Leicester. I mean, that's 6 losses in a row for them, which means all of the games that they've played in their second half of the season, they've lost. Are they heading for that relegation playoff, or did you see some fight that might give them a spark for their last remaining games? Because they do still have a game in hand.
Yes, they do still have a game in hand, although it is against Arsenal. So they're not going to have it easy. And I think it kind of feels like a done deal for me at this point. I think teams around them like West Ham and Liverpool can kind of dig their way out of that bottom place, but it feels like Leicester are on that track to relegation. But, you know, I tuned into this game and in the first half particularly, like I saw a lot more spark from them than I have for a while. And I think obviously that goal was great from Alicia Lehman, but just I do think there's still something there, and I'd like to see them really, really push, but whether it will be enough, I'm not so sure. But yeah, I think it is a shame. I don't think they've been played to their best, perhaps this season, and I think maybe there's been, you know, some sort of tactical and personnel kind of who's been picked for the starting lineups and things like that, where, you know, I think there could have better decisions been made, because there's still something there with Leicester, and I think, you know, when they do play well, they are an exciting team and they can challenge sort of teams like Villa, but unfortunately they couldn't do it this weekend.
Yeah, and that rounds up the weekend's action. Before we close the pod, we're gonna do a quick roundup of aerial fantasy. In terms of the Decoding the WSL League, Stan Lee's team Villanova is first and is also first overall in the world. They got 80 points this week with Bunny Shaw as captain, Jennifer Falk getting a 10-pointer, Kirsty Hanson getting a 9-pointer. And the best game week 18 score was Kerry B's team, who got 104 points. So that's only 6 off the highest in the world. Kerry B played the wall. The best player that Kerry B had was Smilla Holmberg, who got a clean sheet, 2 assists, 2 bonus points, and visionary points. That's a crazy pick. And she also had 8 for Lynn Vilms and 11 for Ndozi in goal. As for my team, I've been doing well overall. I'm currently 49th in the world, but this was not a strong week for me. I decided to go against Bunny Shaw, against my own, not basically captain Bunny Shaw against my own team, and I captained Olivia Smith. So when I saw Arsenal had scored 5, I was like, surely Olivia Smith's done something. She didn't, so it was a disappointing week for me, and probably teaches me to not doubt Bunny Shaw. Izzy, I'll come to you first. How was your team this week?
I'm feeling very smug because it's the second week in a row. I believe I've got the highest score out of at least our sort of Decoding the WSL mini league, but I did captain Shaw, because I'm not an idiot, Jacob. I know how these things go. Weirdly, I did quite well. I got 74 points, but my entire defense was 4 defenders that got a combined score of 4 points. So I had Bronze, Lundqvist, Fox, and Knack, who got 1 point each. But then, thankfully, having Hansen, Holt, Shaw, and Jennifer Falk kind of made up for it. So if only I'd picked Smilla Holmberg, maybe I would have been top in the world. But alas.
And Laura, how did your team do this week?
I feel like a fraud being on this podcast with my fantasy at the moment. Essentially, I haven't updated it in 2 weeks, so it was a bit of a bombshell.
Sometimes that's the best idea.
Yeah, but it would have been. It didn't go too badly, but I didn't have Bunny Shaw captain, so yeah, I had Jess Park captained, who did at least do something. I genuinely didn't check it until kind of post-weekend. Work has been absolutely manic, which is an excuse for neglecting your aerial fantasy, but it's all I have to offer. I did okay. I had Holt, Hemp, Park in the midfield, and Shaw, Russo up front. I had Anadozi and Hansen on the bench, which is gutting. So it could have been a really good week if I'd just captained Shaw. But sadly, the set and forget tactic didn't work for me.
And lastly, Freddie, I'll come to you on aerial fantasy. How was your team?
Also didn't captain Shaw, remarkably. I did captain Russo, so that could have gone worse. I had Park. Hansen's been a real mainstay in my side, so ended up on 66 points, which is probably okay for me. But yeah, ruining that decision not to captain Shaw. It is normally the go-to. I must have just had too much faith in Tottenham and not checked her record against them as well.
Yeah, so basically the moral of the story is don't listen to us for well, maybe listen to Izzy for fantasy advice.
I feel like it's only because I've done that mistake one too many times, and this week I said no more.
Exactly. Well, that rounds off the game week 18 review. Thank you very much for listening, everyone. Thank you, Izzy. Thank you, Freddie. And thank you, Laura, for coming on the pod. If you did enjoy today's episode, please make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow Decoding the WSL on Instagram and check out the Decoding the WSL YouTube channel. Thanks again for watching, and we'll speak to you at the next one. Thank you.